And we're back like we never left. Oregon fans, what's going on? How we living? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with Scoop Duck on 3. It is Monday, May 13th, 2024, coming to you from Long Beach, California. It's Monday, which means we got a mailbag episode for you guys, the listener, with my guy, Travis Rookley. But before we get into that, the Ducks Dish podcast is brought to you in part by Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Not sure what your plans are for dinner tonight, but you should get on out to Ranchito Grill at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. Try their homemade tortillas. They got great food, great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy, Ruben, and let him know that Max Torres sent you. Like I said, not rolling solo. I got my guy Travis Rookley on for another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Travis, we got some overwhelming support from the awesome Scoop Duck community after our last episode, so figured had to bring it back, and hopefully we're going to make this a regular thing. How you doing, man?
Yeah, thanks, Max. Yeah, glad to be with you. Getting through the Monday blues with a little football talk. And like you said, tons of awesome questions came through. So excited to get rolling.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's been super fun just kind of getting back in that Scoop Duck community over the past month or so. Coming up, I think this week I'll hit my 1 month since I've been back over at Scoop Duck. So a big thank you to everyone who's been reading me over there and engaging with me on the Scoop Duck boards and all of that good stuff. If you guys are here on YouTube at the Scoop Duck YouTube channel, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're trending up in a big way on this channel, and I want to continue to grow this awesome community that we have. So before we get into some mailbag, Travis did an absolutely awesome job getting some of the top questions together from the subscribers over on scoopduck.com. I was able to make my way out to Mater Dei last week for some recruiting interviews. So getting some scoop, getting some intel as the Ducks continue to really make that one of their mainstays in the Golden State, in the state of California. And Travis, I already talked with Justin about him a little bit, but maybe the guy we start off with here is Jordan Davison, because it seems like he's the big name to track here that the Ducks are still going after in the 2025 class at Mater Dei. And that's a battle that's heating up.
Yeah, I mean, it just reading. You obviously did an awesome job catching up with him, and just reading some of those quotes and some of the other things that have came out about him recently. It's, I mean, a huge credit to Coach Samples for getting us obviously back in the game there. I mean, you heard some of the quotes coming from Jordan himself about being ready to drop Oregon, when Coach Locke left, and I think to be able to pair him with the commitment last Friday from De'Aaron Hill would be just a slam dunk 1-2 combo. And I think it looks like some visit news is trickling out on him. I'm not sure the exact order. Obviously, you always love to be the last visit, but it's really shaping up to be a pretty big month of June when it comes to not only visits, but guys starting to line up some commitment dates.
Justin and we both kind of agreed that Ohio State had the lead there. And I know you and I have been talking a bit about it, and maybe you're a little bit more optimistic about Oregon's chances than I am at this time on Monday, May 13th, 2024. But I think part of the reason you have to be optimistic if you're an Oregon fan, right, just to play not devil's advocate necessarily, but look at both sides, right, is the fact that he still gave them another look. He's still looking at them. He got up for that spring game. Seems like he said he genuinely connected with Coach Samples, and we know how huge the relationships are in the recruiting process. But we also don't have a decision timeline just yet for Jordan Davison. When I asked him, he kind of just flat out said, I don't know. I'll just do it when it feels right, more or less. So it was interesting that I asked him about the official visits, and he said that he's going to be going to each of his finalists. So we have Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, and Alabama. But he didn't say when, which I thought was kind of interesting. It was kind of, those dates will be released to the public soon, which just shows you how high profile this recruitment is. I didn't put it in the story, but when I asked him about his finalists, I was kind of saying, are you solely looking at those four? He's like, yeah, it's those four and one other school. So you know how that goes, which I thought was also a mysterious quote. My guess is it would maybe be USC. I don't know. But it seems like this is, from every indication that I've gotten, it's an Oregon versus Ohio State battle. And to your point about pairing him with De'Aaron Hill, I think that would be a terrific thunder and lightning combo, because we saw QB11 had the Kenyon Barner comp for De'Aaron Hill. And then Jordan Davison has looked like a grown man since I saw him for the first time. And that was back in 2022 when I moved out to Southern California. So I think Oregon has the opportunity to close some ground here. I think they have closed some ground. Chip Kelly and Carlos Laughlin both came out to Mater Dei to see Jordan Davison last week, he told me. So if I'm Coach Samples, I think that's probably my next priority is getting out there and getting some FaceTime, some one-on-one time with Davison at Mater Dei.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, we as you know, the months wind down and depending on that decision date, I think that's, I mean, we're one of those times where proximity is a big advantage for us. And you never want to discount a school like Alabama or any of his other finalists. But like you, I think Ohio State is definitely the biggest competition. But just like you hear that Mater Dei family being talked a lot about, I mean, you hear that being described at the culture at Oregon. And so I got to think with Nazir Wyatt already in the fold for this year, and multiple other former teammates of his at Oregon, I think if Lanning and Samples can get him to visit again in June, which it sounds like he will, especially as that last visit, I'd be in a pretty confident place, I have to say.
We'll have to see. I think that getting him on campus for the spring game, like I said, was a step in the right direction. So the next update that we're going to have to keep our eye on is the official visit schedule, and if the Ducks are able to get him back on campus again, perhaps before that starts, because if he's only taken 4 official visits, I think he's got a little bit more time here in the month of May, because it seems like Oregon's doing a bulk of their official visits in the month of June. Although I don't know if you noticed this, Travis, it felt like official visits started way earlier this year than they have in the past. I know some people are even already taking them now.
It's just wild to see the timelines just expedited year to year. I mean, I feel like June caught us off guard last year, with things moving up. And now, like you said, things are coming into May. It's just this interesting like push and pull. And you can see the Oregon staff really trying to navigate that in a certain way, because with NIL in place now, you want to be the last visit, or you want to be able to possibly save a visit until the fall where you can kind of swoop in last minute, put your best offer on the table when it comes to resources, different things. So it's really a strategic game now. And whether it comes to bringing a guy in May versus bringing a guy in November, what's the best time based on his timeline, and what's the best time where you want to kind of lay in the weeds and pounce at that last minute, if that makes sense based upon the certain recruit.
The last recruit I want to talk about from Mater Dei, I'll have a couple more updates over on the site coming out over the course of the week. But the last big guy I got to know in 2025 is Chuck McDonald III. Chuck McDonald III is a big-time DB out here in Southern California, and a little bit of a newer item. Over the weekend, he announced the top 4 of Oregon, USC, Alabama, and Georgia. And if you're watching us on the YouTube channel now, we got his junior tape on the screen. And this is an interesting one, Travis, because I talked to Chuck. It was actually my first interview with him, and he was pretty soft-spoken for whatever it was worth. He was wearing a Bama jacket, zip up. So maybe he's feeling the tide. I don't know how much stock people like to put in things like that. I don't think it's a huge deal. Yeah, he's not really a name that I think I've heard a whole lot about, especially when it comes to top guys out west that Oregon has really been prioritizing. But at the same time, you look at what the Ducks have been able to do, not only at Mater Dei, but in Southern California, especially maybe just against USC and really anyone else who's there. If there is an elite top tier defensive guy that the Ducks want in Southern California, more often than not, they're going to get him. Look at just these past couple of years with Dakota Fields, Aiden Breland, Dylan Williams. The list goes on. And then you can't underestimate the Rashad Wadood factor with a SoCal DB, and that's exactly what Chuck McDonald is. So I definitely don't think that Oregon leads here, but I think they're kind of I think they're kind of waiting to see how he moves. He's going to be taking an official visit out to Oregon, but we don't have a decision date just yet. So maybe it's a little bit of a TBD situation, because they are going after some serious talent here in the 25 class.
Yeah, and I mean, he definitely speaks to the kind of size speed combination that our defensive staff likes. Obviously, you mentioned the proximity and the relationship we have with Mater Dei. Um, it's just wild to hear. You hear Alabama, Georgia, USC, and you think, man, those are some heavy hitters. At the same time, like you said, I mean, the success Oregon has had at that school, one, and then two, just the success that Lanning has had when we've decided to prioritize a California recruit, especially defensively. Oftentimes we've had success there. So I think, like you said, he's the kind of guy that we'll see, evaluation wise, and if the staff pushes, which I think is the key here, I feel as confident as getting us as anyone.
A couple other names to watch at DB, maybe more specifically at corner. DJ Pickett out of the state of Florida. He's probably the single biggest name, I would probably say, in the secondary that Oregon's going after. You also have a guy like Trey McNutt, one of the best safeties in the country that the Ducks are also in the mix for. And then Adonis Curry at cornerback. He's another 2025 guy out of Southern California. So we'll see how that all develops, but just wanted to get a little modern day update for you guys off the top here, because I know how interested everybody is in what the Ducks are doing over there in Santa Ana when it comes to pursuing some of these top prospects. But this is a mailbag episode, so Travis, I wanted to kind of get into some of these questions. Like we said, a lot of these came from our readers over at Scoop Duck on 3. You can try us out. I believe we still have that promo going, 1 month for $1. So make sure to try us out over there. It is the place to be if you are a fan of Oregon football recruiting. But with that, Travis, I will toss it over to you.
Yeah, let's do it. I think definitely the most common question just came from different variations of talking through the offensive line. So just picked out a couple specifically. Very curious what Oregon's plan is next year, specifically at tackle, where we'll possibly return no starters and little experience. Are we dependent on the portal in 2025 for two of the most vital positions in the physically grueling Big Ten? And then secondly, kind of with that, are we emphasizing the offensive line in recruiting? So I know you'll touch on kind of the prep side of it in just a minute, but I know for me, I mean, it all starts with the decision that Ajani Cornelius and Josh Connerly need to make. And I think the more you hear different people around Oregon, they speak to the chance. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Connerly leaves after this season. I think if he's faced with the prospect of maybe a second or third round grade versus come back for a senior season and work himself into the first round, I think that's a pretty appealing prospect, both for him, and I would say that we'll have a good chance NIL wise to be able to keep him there. I mean, if he does leave, that's certainly a huge void in 25. But I think we talked about it last week. Like, you got to see what you got there, whether it's Kawika Rogers, whether it's George Silva. Like, you got to look for opportunities throughout this year to get those guys opportunities and give those guys a chance to see, hey, are you ready for 25, or do we need to combine that 2025 kind of portal class with that prep class and hope for some guys come in ready to play right away?
And I think that's been a big focus for this Oregon coaching staff all throughout spring practice, is just trying to build out that 2 deep along the offensive line, because you have to give what you have a shot, right? And I think that that's why you want to look at this schedule, see some of these games that, all right, we're not too worried about what we're going to have on our hands here in that game. So blow the doors off the opponent and then just get your backups in, guys like a Kawika Rogers, a George Silva. Maybe we're talking Dave Iuli or Jaquan McRoy, excuse me. I know that was primarily tackles there, but overall, you just have to. I mean, you're losing Marcus Harper the third, or the second, excuse me. So that's another guy you have to think about replacing. I don't know if this is jumping the gun, but like looking ahead to the 25 season, at least you're going to have another year with Poncho Laulaulu. You would think, right? So I don't think that they're going to be reliant on the portal. I think it's a little early to say that. Would it be an early contender for a position that they're going to go looking for? I think that absolutely makes sense. But you have to give some of these guys, I think, a shot on your roster and get them into some big situations so you can see what you ultimately have on your hands. And then let's look at the 25 class, because that's a big question right now, Travis, is just what's going on with offensive line recruiting. I think that was kind of the summary of one of those questions there. And for me, we can get into some more names in a second here, but I was telling you before we hopped on and recorded here, Oregon's done a lot of really good work at a lot of other positions like receiver, quarterback, running back. They've done pretty and even tight end. They don't have a commitment there, but they've been doing a bunch of work there with guys like Desan Brame and Lincoln Cure. So I think that this summer is going to be really integral into what Alik Terry and Mike Kavanaugh ultimately want to do. Coach Ryan Walk, by the way, as well, what they want to do at this position. I know some of the big names that we're kind of tracking as far as guys that are probably going to be making it out. Michael Vasusi is a big one. He's probably the top lineman in the state of Texas. He was out at OT7 last weekend, I want to say, and he was just dripped out in Oregon gear. So again, put the stock into that you want to, but it seems like he's kind of warming up to the Ducks. He had told me a while ago that he was going to be taking an official visit out to Oregon. He took an unofficial early, like the week before the spring game or leading up to the spring game. And then the big goal for the staff there was to get an official visit from the 5-star offensive lineman. And they were able to do that. He didn't tell me what date, but it was basically like, I know I'm going to take an official here. So we'll see what some of those specifics look like. A couple other guys. You have Aaron Dunn out of the state of Utah. He's another big one. You also have some Gorman standouts. SJ Alofaituli in the 2025 class. He's supposed to be on campus for an unofficial visit starting May 17th. Justin Hopkins had that story last week. So I think you're going to see Oregon. Also, Zaire Addison, that's a huge one out of the state of Florida. It seems like UCLA is kind of been making a little bit of a push in that recruitment, which is interesting to me because we know that Deshaun Foster is trying to turn things around there. But Zaire Addison's another really big one to watch. We know that Alik Terry and Will Stein made the trip out to Atlanta to see Juan Gaston. Gaston. I think it's Gaston. I don't know why I'm tripping on my names today. But yeah, Juan Gaston out of Atlanta. I think he got RPM to Georgia by Wiltfong last week. But you can see that they're putting in the work. They're getting out there to see some of these top prospects. And I think while you'd like to see a little bit more work already done, maybe a commitment or two along the offensive line, I think that the Ducks are going to be just fine.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, thinking about 25 specifically, obviously on the field, you never want to be in a place where you're counting on true freshman O-linemen anyways. That's a learning curve position, even for the top of the top. So, as great as it would have been for, a Jordan Seaton or someone like that last year, I think that there's no reason to believe, given the roster that Dan and Marshall and the rest of the staff has built, that we're not going to be in a spot next year where we're ready to compete at that spot. And I think that if that means we need to dip into the portal, it's clear that this staff has shown that they can identify guys that will help and get their guys. And so if it results in, a guy or two on the O-line next year, then so be it. But yeah, I think with those names you listed, and I know Justin's listed some others over at Scoop Duck, check those out. I as nice as it would be, like you said, to have a couple guys in the flock already, I think we'll be fine moving forward.
Yeah, I think they'll be all right. You just kind of gotta do your time and see what names fade, what names surge. And I think this upcoming slate of official visits will give us a good idea of where Oregon's actually at with some of those primary targets. Because if they come in for an official visit, chances are that the staff thinks they have at least a decent shot to make something happen with whatever recruit that might be.
Yep, for sure. Well, I figure this would be a good time to transition, because speaking of Jordan Seaton, one of our next questions we got was, who was a silent commit that never came to be? Which I had some fun racking my brain today, but just the first one I thought of thinking of last season was, I remember getting told early November that Jordan Seaton had hopped in the boat, but you see what happened there.
That was certainly one of the more dramatic recruitments in recent years. That was another one that I think I had heard, maybe not specifically that it was a silent, but I was told that the staff's feeling really good about their shot here. And that was pretty amazing because it was an IMG guy. If you followed Oregon recruiting for a while, you know that Oregon doesn't do too well when it comes to recruiting IMG, which is one of the most talented schools in the entire country. Just an absolute powerhouse. But I had heard as well some very good things about where Oregon shot kind of landed with Seaton. I think they had a really good shot there, but it didn't end up coming through. But hey, now he's at Colorado and they're doing big things. They're not, spoiler alert. But hey, everyone's got to make the decision that's best for them. I'm just not a believer in Colorado in the least. I think the only other one that I really kind of come across was Darius Clemens. He was a local guy out of Westview in the Tualatin area. Is that on or Beaverton? Excuse me. In Beaverton, they were playing Tualatin when I went out to see that game. That was like the only high school game that I went to cover in the state of Oregon when I lived in Eugene, just because there's not very much big time talent out there. No offense, Travis, or anyone else listening, but compared to out here, obviously. So he was a receiver in the 2022 class. He ended up committing to Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. Then he hit the portal, and now he's back at Oregon State, I believe. But that was a guy that I have been told was silently committed to Oregon. So it's kind of just interesting to look back on it now with where Oregon's at the wide receiver position. And then obviously, what happened at Michigan and just the story of it all and the track record and where guys ultimately ended up.
It's just the silent commit world is wild. I always kind of had a hard time understanding it myself and the way staffs navigate that. A couple others just for fun that I thought I'd throw out there. Going in the Wayback Machine a little bit, I still remember Juju Smith from down there in Southern California and Marquise Lee. I don't know how many Duck fans know that they were both ready to sign and hop on board. But that was back in the days when SC had a little bit more pull, I suppose, than today. None of us ever felt too good about that. A couple others just more recently. I remember after Nico's visit, and I think March of, what would that have been, 23? Yeah, I remember being told that he was a Duck and moving forward with that. And then Tennessee came on board, and I know that recruitment's been written about a lot. And then the last one, who's obviously jumped around a little bit, and I think it speaks to maybe his lack of decisiveness when it comes to committing to one school. But I remember being told Caden Proctor was a silent, and on multiple occasions feeling very good about that. But, Saban was there. You can't fault a guy for going to Bama, I suppose.
Yeah, what was Marquise Lee at Poly as well, or was that just Juju? Where did he go to high school? Do you know?
Oh, Marquise Lee.
Is he a SoCal guy?
He was definitely a SoCal guy. I don't remember the school.
Oh, he went to Sarah. Duh. Okay, yeah, same high school as Dakota Fields and Roderick Pleasant.
What's crazy about those ones, Juju, Marquise Lee, probably some other modern day, and those were back in the days when, a guy was at one of those schools, it was just SC. It was foregone conclusion in our minds. Oh, well, he'll go to SC, and just, man, have things changed.
They really have, and it's been cool because I wasn't at the commitment when Dakota announced, but I was when Roderick Pleasant announced, and that was a crazy one. And then because that was obviously Oregon over SC, and then more recently you had Ryan Pelham flipping from USC to Oregon. I was at that one, and that was a crazy moment as well. So there's no shortage of drama and crazy stories that happen when you cover recruiting. And I had also been told a lot about Caden Proctor and how he was looking like a really, really likely guy for Oregon. And when I heard that, I was like, dang, okay. Like, I think I got ready. I might have pre-written a commitment story that weekend, as a matter of fact. Like, that's how close it was to happening. So, yeah, I think that might go down as, I don't know if I'd say one of the greatest what ifs, but if Adrian Clem stuck around at Oregon, I think they were going to get, maybe Proctor was 24, right? Or no, he was 23. He was 23, I think. Yeah. Proctor, Brandon Baker was another one. I mean, I don't know if he was necessarily as silent, but like,
I really thought to one as you can have, if not.
Yeah, I think just that the staff wasn't as sold on him as some of the other schools that were going after him, and obviously he ended up at Texas. But awesome kid that I got to cover a lot, also at Mater Dei. So I think those are kind of the ones that I think about. If we want to just talk about the greatest Ducks that never were, I feel like I'd have to start that with Taj Griffin, because he had all the talent in the world and just did next to nothing at Oregon. Not to be mean, but my God.
Yeah, I mean, that was in that string where we just had, I mean, he was kind of the book end of it, but starting with Chip and then into Helfrich and into Taggart, we just had that string of like big time speed running backs that we were bringing in that, some panned out, but then there was a few guys, Taj included. I remember Lake Seastrunk, some of those other guys that all of us were so fired up when they signed. It was like we were finally actually going national, and then didn't quite pan out. But never been a lack of running backs here, and I think it's the same moving forward.
Yeah, it's going to continue to be absolutely stacked there at running back. I mean, if you could say a position that you're probably never going to have trouble recruiting to Oregon, I think running back's got to be there. But what else you got for us on the mailbag, Travis?
Yeah, I mean, another position I feel probably the same about with running back is receiver. The job Junior Adams has done. And so, question here: how are people involved in the program feel about our wide receiver core compared to last year and nationally? I.e., is Evan Stewart going to compare to Troy Franklin this year?
Yeah, I think based on what I've been able to hear, I think people are really, really confident about this wide receiver room. And part of the reason for that and what makes it different from last year to this year, I think, is you maybe didn't get a lot of production out of guys like Gary and Trey Sean, but now you can enter this season maybe having a better feel for how they fit into your offense and what kind of a role you can realistically have for those guys. Um, and then I think you also have someone like Jurion Dickey who's supposed to come in, and you can kind of see how he maybe slots into your offense. I think that's going to help you out a little bit because you just have more talented options there. And even look at some of these younger guys that they added recently. I think that you can have some new contributions there. So you're not like super dependent on those guys that are coming back, but I think that definitely raises your floor if you're looking at the wide receiver room. And I don't know about you, Travis, but I'm already seeing Evan Stewart being mentioned as a top receiver prospect in next year's draft. So I think that also speaks to the confidence that people have and what he's going to be able to do at Oregon. And I mean, I don't want to put too much into a spring game, but that near one-handed grab, if he comes down with that in the spring game, that's probably the play of the spring game. So the guy's crazy twitchy. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be on that level that Troy Franklin was on. And maybe that's just because they spread the ball around a bit more, is my guess. But man, this is probably the most talented receiver room that we've seen at Oregon. So if they can just find some opportunities for some of these guys that have been around, like Kyler Casper, for example, I mean, you have the sky's the limit for this receiver room because it's incredibly talented, and I think you can say it's pretty darn deep.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I completely agree with that. I think that I don't think you'll see Evan Stewart. I don't think his production will match that of Troy last year, but I think that in terms of making up for Troy specifically, I think between Stewart, Dickey, Casper, like you mentioned, I just think you'll see a much more like deep room that can spread out catches a little more. I also think at the same time, love Bo Nix, bless his heart. Tez and Troy were his guys. And I'm all for feed the studs. That's Will Stein's mantra. But at the same time, I mean, you could see Nix first game against Washington, especially early on in the year, he improved as the year went, like really lock on those guys. And I think this year for Dylan Gabriel coming in, he's going to have a much more diverse, well-rested, varied wide receiver core. And I think that he's going to be able to use a little more of that depth in a different way than Bo did.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah. And maybe you can think that he'll spread the ball around a little bit more. Gabriel will, because he doesn't have a season already playing with these guys. So it's an opportunity to maybe not lock in on a receiver quite so much. So I think that's a great point. And I think it makes for some excitement going into the 2024 season. And I hope that they can have some of these young guys maybe play some more, because I don't want it to be a trend for Oregon where they get all these big time wide receivers and then they take a while to see the field, because if they're not on the field, I think in some cases it can be depth, right? It's just hard to break through with those guys in front of you. But also if they're around for a couple of years and they're not seeing the field, I think that's kind of indicative of where they're at and if they can ultimately be contributors at Oregon. So let's maybe get into one more question, Travis, and then we'll wind it down. On today's episode of the Mailbag.
Between offense and defense, which will be a better unit next season and why?
This is a tough one. This really is. And I think that speaks to how talented of a team Oregon has on their hands, or at least how talented it looks on paper, right? And I don't know why I feel like the need to say this, but I mean, I'm not ready to necessarily crown Oregon anything yet, because you can win the offseason championships, right? Those are kind of the troll comments that you see when people are talking about Oregon recruiting, but there that is the fact of the matter, right? Getting those guys is only half the battle. Now you have to put it all together, build out that two deep, and see what you ultimately have. So for me, even though I think the offense is more predictable and looks like the safer bet and the more sure thing, if you'll call it that, I want to go defense. I think I'm putting my chips on Dan Lanning. I'm putting my chips on the roster that they've been able to build. Look at the defensive line. I think that could very well be the strongest group on this team. And I think if that's your strongest group, then that means you're getting consistent pressure on the quarterback and you're stopping the run. And then that just lets your second and third levels just feast and do their thing. And I also think that the additions of Jabbar Muhammad, Kobe Savage, Kim Alexander, Brandon Johnson are going to be really big. So I think offense is the safe answer, but I'm going to bet on Lanning and the rest of the staff and the guys that they've brought in from the high school ranks that are now ready to take a step forward this year, and the transfer portal who are ready to show we've done this a little bit. We know what we're doing, and we're going to take this defense to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, you saw I think the On3 defensive line rankings came out today and had us in the top 5, a spot I didn't think I'd ever find ourselves. And I think that when you just think through the schedule, and especially the way, to your point, that our defense and specifically like the strengths of our defense match up with our schedule, I think that we're in a great spot to make that secondary jump. Last year, all of us were talking about trying to be in the top 20, try to get to that top 20 spot as a defense. I think this is the year you can easily make the argument you jump into the top 10. I mean, I just think about our starters across the D-line, 2 returning linebackers with a ton of experience, and then some of those secondary pieces you mentioned. Outside of Ohio State, I just don't see an offense on our schedule that can really push and challenge us. And I think if you're saying that at this point in the season, there's no reason for us to believe that our defense isn't going to be pretty highly ranked across the board. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think most people would say offense there, but I can certainly see an argument for where we're, it's going to be hard to beat us if we're giving up between, 7-14 points a game.
And maybe that just speaks to the excitement around this team again, that we're saying that in May, that the defense could end up being the better side of the ball for the Ducks. And it's early to say that. Obviously, we can't say a whole lot about the defense because there are a lot of new pieces that we haven't really seen how they are going to slot into this defense. But I'm excited about it, and I think that this is when you talk about the most talented roster that Oregon's ever put together, I think a huge part of that is defense, and that's why you brought Lanning to Oregon. If you really want to boil it down to that, obviously he knows how to run a program. He's shown that, but you brought him to Oregon to field an awesome defense, an elite defense, and maybe we're looking at something that can rival the likes of 2019 with Oregon as far as how good this defense could really be. I don't know if that's stretching things at all, but it certainly feels like they have that possibility.
Yeah, and I mean, just to kind of wrap the bow around it and bring us back to our first conversation, I mean, it must be music to Lanning's ear as a defensive guy to hear these West Coast prospects up and down the coast saying like, hey, Oregon's the school out here that plays defense. That is a total shift from the way that Oregon used to be described. I mean, I remember, 2009 into the 10s, we're playing for national titles, and still the national discussion around us is, we're a finesse program, we're a soft program, we're an offensive program, we're a spread program, all these things that are the last thing from the way we're described today. So to hear kids from Bosco, modern day, the cream of the crop out West saying, you want to play defense, you come to Oregon. That's a huge shift, and one that I have to assume couldn't make Lanning much happier.
Absolutely. That they have really become the destination Oregon has for top defensive talent. So it does feel like that point kind of brings us back full circle. But before we get out of here, Travis, any any thoughts on your mind that you want to get out of here, or get out in the open? As far, I sound like a therapist. As far as
That's why I come here.
just Oregon football and what the Ducks got going on right now.
No, man, just so excited. I mean, the next few months are a super exciting time for recruiting junkies. I think you mentioned it earlier, but you start to see visits coming in June. You're starting to see guys starting to line up some commit dates that are looking good for us. And then for those of us junkies who are planning to attend some games on the road, putting in our ticket requests, hopefully getting some good seats out at Wisconsin, out in Michigan. Excited to go to those games. So I think Pate had it last Saturday, 15 more Saturdays. So things are coming.
It sure feels like that. We're getting closer. May is just gonna fly by. I feel like the showcase season on the high school scene around here really snuck up on me. There's even gonna be some summer 7-on-7 stuff, and then I know that July is gonna be crazy busy for me. So like when I'm going on a big camping trip in July. So like by the time I come back from that, the season will basically be here because that's early August. So I'm super stoked. I think that this is going to be a special class again that the Ducks put together here in the 2025 cycle. And I just can't wait to cover all of it. So yeah, we're going to keep doing our thing. And Travis, man, let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, on Twitter at Travis Rookley, and just appreciate all the listener questions, all the people that threw some ideas into the chat and on Twitter, and Scoop Duck. And I think one of these days maybe we'll have to pop in and do just a live Q&A or something like that where I can answer the rest of those questions. Just super grateful for all the listeners. Everyone sent those over, and we'll find an opportunity to answer some more of those later this week, hopefully.
Yeah, I wanted to get to more, but the modern day one kind of got me fired up, and kind of just went on not a tangent, but that was longer than I expected. So we'll hopefully have some live streams coming up here in the near future. We just have some things we're working on with the channel right now to kind of get us ready for that. But yeah, just to make sure you guys lock in with Travis on Twitter, like we said, at Travis Rookley. If you want to find more of me, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at mtorresports. Subscribe to the Scoop Duck YouTube channel. That is a tremendous way to support us. But the best way you can support us at the end of the day is go on over to Scoop Duck and subscribe. Like I said, you can try us for a whole month for just $1. You're not going to find better Oregon recruiting coverage out there. I can guarantee you that. So try us out over there, and then share the show. Share the Ducks Dish podcast with your friends, with your family, and with other Duck fans. But until next time, thank you to Travis for coming on, and thank you to you guys for stopping by and talking some Duck football. And we'll see you in the next episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.